This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Thank you all for being with me here again today. Lots to get to. Programming note, as I've mentioned a couple times this week, no shows next week, no shows July 4th, taking a little bit of time off here. Recharge, refresh, just a little bit of time off. Everybody needs a little time off every now and then. So if you have made a habit of listening to this podcast every day or every weekday at least, I'd like you to break that habit for 6 weekdays and then come back strong with me on Tuesday, July 5th, when I'm sure we'll have plenty to get to with Patrick Royce and then NHL draft, all sorts of stuff happening that week that we will want to talk about. This show, we will talk about the NBA draft, Wolves making a bunch of picks, making a bunch of trades. Tim Connelly, their new president of basketball operations, sure seems like he likes to wheel and deal. Maybe Trader Tim should be his nickname here. We had Trader Rick up and down the draft board, Rick Spielman. He's gone now, though. The tradition with him carries on, though, with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and now Tim Connelly with the Wolves. Lots of deals there. We'll get into that and where the Wolves ultimately landed here in a minute. Got to talk Twins. Got a much-needed, if tense, 1-0 win over Cleveland. One day, I guess, after losing 11-10, they win 1-0, which is, that's just baseball right there. You go from 21 runs in a game to 1 run in a game. But for the Twins, the most important thing was the outcome. They get the win, get back into a tie for first place in the American League Central, get themselves, feeling decent about how things are going again after those 2 very difficult losses. And, goes to show again how resilient this team can be and has been so far this year. Lynx won again, beat the Mercury for the second time in a row. Sylvia Fowles made her return to the lineup after missing time with injury. That was great news for the Lynx and showed up right away on the court, so we'll talk about that. And Adrian Heath, Minnesota United manager, got a 2-year contract extension, much to the chagrin of Loons fans on Twitter who have been ardent Heath detractors, I guess is how you would put it. A lot of people upset with some of his tactics, things like that. I'll probably have him on a show next month sometime to talk about the extension, talk about Everton, big match with his old club coming up for the Loons later on this summer. First, what did I miss? Like I said at the jump, going to talk Wolves. And I had Chris Hine, Wolves beat writer, jump on via voicemail late last night after all the wheeling and dealing was done, after everything had been sorted out. And he gave a really good overview of what happened for the night. So I want to play that for you first here.
It was hardly a boring night for the Timberwolves, as Tim Connelly's first draft included a lot of wheeling and dealing, moving up and down the draft board. They started out with the number 19 overall pick. They ended up with 2 first-round picks, numbers 22 and eventually 26. And they take with those picks Walker Kessler out of Auburn, a center, and Duke's Wendell Moore, who was instrumental in getting the Blue Devils to the Final Four this season. In Kessler, the Wolves are taking one of the best defensive players in the country. In fact, the Defensive Player of the Year nationally last year in college. Kessler, renowned for his shot blocking ability, rim protecting ability, I think, which is something that this roster was lacking a little bit last year. Now, the question is just how much is Kessler going to be contributing next season? Tough to tell. After the draft, Tim Connelly couldn't talk about specifics in terms of the players they acquired because the trades weren't finalized, but throughout this process, he has been adamant that expectations will not be that these will be regular contributors right away or expected to be regular contributors right away. If they are, then that's great, but that's not what their expectations are. Nonetheless, Kessler adds some size down low. We'll see if his offensive game can come along and how that will develop as time goes along here, but the Wolves maybe adding a little bit of height and rebounding ability, shot blocking ability on a team that doesn't quite have a ton of it. Wendell Moore came on really strong in his third season at Duke after really struggling the first 2 years. He's got the ability to score with the ball, kind of off the ball as well. Really improved his shooting, shot over 40% from three-point range next season. The knock on him is he athletic enough to play at the NBA level? We'll see. I think he profiles maybe more as a complementary type of player instead of, maybe somebody who's going to be carrying a team one day. And then in the second round, the Wolves did a little more wheeling and dealing, moving up and down the draft board. Made for a chaotic night, but they take Josh Minot out of Memphis, somebody who they were targeting late in the draft, who's going to be an upside project. And then they take Matteo Spagnolo, a guard from Italy, who will remain there for now, not join the Wolves right away. They also traded out of the 48 pick with Indiana for a future second-round pick and some cash. So a lot of wheeling and dealing. A couple new Timberwolves to get familiarized on next year's roster, and it just remains to be seen, I think, in general, just how much they're going to contribute. We will see.
Now, I think it is fair to wonder how much both Kessler and Moore will play next season, but I do think it is important to note that both of them have traits that could help them get on the court and could help the Wolves in areas of deficiency, most notably Kessler, right? Because this is a guy who was NCAA Defensive Player of the Year, averaged 4 blocks a game, 8 rebounds a game, 11.4 points per game. I think if you average that out over 40 minutes, he blocked 4.6 shots per game. You average it out for every 40 minutes, it's like 7 blocks per game. It's pretty impressive to see what he can do from that perspective. A true center and an intriguing lineup options now. I mean, if the Wolves aren't able to acquire a veteran center to kind of maybe pair along with this potential Karl Anthony Towns experiment where they might play him some at power forward, or at least they're open to the idea of playing Towns some at least at the 4. Now they've got Walker Kessler, a guy who has rim protection ability, guy who can finish, obviously dunks, but also blocked shots, things like that. Things where Tim Connelly, their personnel boss, before the draft started at his media availability the day before the draft, talked about ending possessions, talked about how that is the most important thing on the defensive end is finishing possessions. And that means rebounding and in some cases blocking shots too, because a block shot can lead to an end of possession if you're able to keep the ball after you get the blocked shot. So that part of it, it can help address a deficiency that they had last year. They were the third worst defensive rebounding team last year by percentage. They were the third worst defensive rebounding team in the playoffs last year by percentage. They allowed the most points in the paint per game in the playoffs last season. They allowed a whole bunch of second chance points. They allowed the second most second chance points. They did not do a good job of finishing possessions, especially when it mattered the most last year. And now Kessler, again, we'll see. We'll see how much he is able to help right away, but I do think he has the ability to do that, and he does have the skill set to do that. And here actually is Kessler talking about what he brings to the table and how excited he was to get his name called.
I'm just, I'm ecstatic. I'm excited for the opportunity. As a kid, you look at this, level of basketball and you don't really understand that it's a real thing. It's an attainable thing, and to finally get here, I mean, I'm it's surreal. I'm just so excited. Just be a defender. I think that's really what I was, what I did in college, and also just my, playing hard, and just trying to win.
Now Moore, on the other hand, a guy who played for Duke, the blue blood guy that could has that lineage, and had the production in his third and final college season, really blossomed last year. Shot 41% from 3-point range after shooting 30% the year before. You do worry a little bit when you see someone make a jump like that. You worry if it's, if it was a true improvement or if it was a one-year mirage. I think about a guy like Josh Okogie, who shot 38% from three-point range in college, was pretty consistent from year to year, from freshman to sophomore year, but when he got to the league, it was pretty obvious he was not a shooter, and it has not gotten any better. So you do wonder sometimes how the shooting, when the distance gets a little further out, when the spacing changes, when you don't maybe have quite as much time to load it up in the NBA, whether that player can be the same level of shooter. But long story short, they got 2 first-round picks out of the night. If you look at value charts, I think Kevin Pelton put one together a couple of years ago. I don't know if he's updated that since then, but basically it had a look at the value charts. The Wolves had traded the 19 pick for 22 and 29, and then had traded back up to 26. Second-round picks not worth a whole lot in this chart, but those are future second-rounders. The Wolves did pick up a future second-rounder in one of their second-round trades, but definitely looks like in terms of value, they won the deal from getting 22 and 29 for 19. So that piece of it, I think, was good. I think fans certainly had debates over who the Wolves should take, especially at 19, because there was some good, interesting players still on the board. A lot of armchair GMs. I don't think they were in the room with Connelly when he was talking about all the disagreements and all the things they were going back and forth on. But they certainly had opinions. The Wolves go in a certain direction, choose size, choose a little bit of shooting and athleticism with their next pick. And then the second round, some projects, right? You're talking about guys who almost certainly won't help next year. I mean, Matteo Spagnolo certainly won't help. He'll be in Italy still next year. And then Josh Minott, number 45, an upside project that, as Chris Hine described him, that could potentially help down the road, but it's not going to be factoring into things next year. So, basically, they get 2 first-round picks, and then you got to pay those guys. Those are guaranteed salaries, but it's not too bad once you're talking about down low there. But that is guaranteed salary. You got to carry on your books. But in a perfect world, those guys are able to either contribute right away or show enough potential in development that they will become future players for them. And the Wolves, different regime, different top of the regime has been leading their last few drafts, but they've done a good job at doing just that. Finding guys later in rounds or even an undrafted free agency that have helped out. Jaden McDaniels was a late first-round pick. Jalen Noel was a second-round pick. Naz Reid and Jordan McLaughlin were undrafted free agents. Those are all guys that, while not necessarily all of them have been in the rotation all the time for the Wolves, have played key minutes for them at key times and have been, factors for them going forward, thinking about how this roster comes together. So you need guys like that. You need to be able to put a roster together like that. It can't just be number 1 overall picks that are supplying all of the firepower on your roster. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I don't think we learned a ton about Connelly's draft strategy. He couldn't talk about most of the players they drafted because they were all part of draft night trades that can't be officially consummated until the league year starts. But it was interesting to hear Connelly talk a little bit about after the draft about just kind of what kind of player he does look for. So let's listen to that now.
I like guys that care to be in the gym. I don't like guys that have one skill set. I'm from Baltimore, so is he nice? Is the player nice? I like nice players, like guys that can hoop. So I don't know if that's quantifiable. I don't know if that's, some really cool way in which I approach scouting. But when you played, you like hoopers.
I think the biggest thing Wolves fans have to be excited about right now is the possibility of a big lineup with Kessler and maybe being able to finish off possessions more regularly when he is in the game, and just the idea of, can you create different matchups for Karl-Anthony Towns that he can exploit on offense and take some of the pressure off of him on defense to have to do so many different things at the rim. Just remember, Wolves in the playoffs last year gathered just 69% of all available defensive rebounds. If Walker Kessler is truly the nice player that Tim Connelly is hinting at, that number will improve next season.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Now, before we get to the Twins, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk at least a little bit about the top of the whole draft board. Chet Holmgren, Minnehaha Academy star, goes number 2 overall to Oklahoma City. Orlando passes on him with the number 1 pick, does not reunite him with former Minnehaha Academy teammate Jalen Suggs, who the Magic took last year, but nevertheless, that is 2 straight top 5 picks, not just for Minnesota, but for Minnehaha Academy, a school not too far away from where I live, like a little over a mile away from where I live. I've gone and watched games there before. It is unbelievable to me to think about how that school is now producing, has now produced 2 back-to-back top 5 picks in the NBA. Just an amazing story, an amazing time for Minnesota basketball. Best of luck to Chet Holmgren. I'm sure we're going to be, revisiting this draft, the top 3 of the draft board, because there's a lot of debate over whether who should be number 1. Orlando ends up going with Paolo Banchero, the Duke pick, which was a bit of a surprise. And then Auburn's Jabari Smith Jr. went number 3 overall to the Rockets, with Holmgren in the middle to Oklahoma City. That will be, something to watch as the years go on. Who ended up making the right picks? Who ended up, winning or losing that draft? So that will be an interesting thing to watch as well. Let's talk Twins. Like I said at the jump, a 1-0 win. Some good news in that game was Devin Smeltzer pitching 6 shutout innings, giving the Twins the start they didn't really get from Sonny Gray. They were hoping to get from Sonny Gray, but didn't get. Keeping them in the game. Nick Gordon playing center field, but Byron Buxton missed a 2nd straight game. His knee acting up. That's not good news for the Twins, but Gordon filling in the way he did with that long home run to straightaway center field, that was good news for them, because that was the only run they got and turned out to be the only run they needed. It was dicey, though. A couple of pitching decisions that Rocco Baldelli made that left fans a little bit frustrated and could have been ripe for second guessing. Taking out Smeltzer after 6 innings. He had thrown a decent number of pitches, but it seemed like maybe they could try to get one more inning out of him if they wanted to stretch him out. He had thrown, I'm just looking at it now, 92 pitches. So, it's, for 30, 40 years ago, he might have pitched 9 innings because he was cruising so well through that game. But, and then Joe Smith comes into the game, immediately gives up a bunch of base runners, loads the bases, and somehow the Twins escape that. With Cleveland in the top of the 7th got a walk, a double, and then a hit by pitch. So it's bases loaded, nobody out, and the Twins escape it with a couple of fielder's choice ground outs to second. I think first base and then third base. Got the out at home, and then got a line out to end the inning. And then in the 9th, the Twins had Joan Duran rolling. He had, pitched a very clean 8th. He hit a batter, but he got, 2 strikeouts and a ground out. And then he struck out the first batter in the 9th. Didn't want to stretch him out any further, though. He had already thrown, I'm looking now, he had already thrown a decent number of pitches, and he'd thrown 2 innings on Tuesday. So I get that. I get Rocco Baldelli's reasoning in that. Duran thrown 17 pitches, probably tempting to try to get him through 2 more batters. They bring in Caleb Thielbar. He gives up a double right away, but gets the last 2 outs in the game, gets a save. And so they escape with the win, much-needed win, again, after losing those first 2 games in the series in rather heartbreaking fashion, right? We talked a lot about the 11-10 loss, but the one before that was just as bad. I mean, they were up 5-3 in the 8th inning of that game and ended up losing 6-5 in 11 innings. So, giving up 4 runs in the 9th the next night was bad, but both of those cumulatively could have taken a toll on them. And if they had lost this one in similar fashion, say Thielbar comes in and gives up 2 runs in the 9th, that would have been a very tough one. Again, a lot of season left at that point still, but mentally, those kinds of losses take a toll. So very important for them to get that win on Thursday and get back into a tie for first place in the division. Now, Buxton's injury, one that we've been talking about all year, that is bothersome. That is troublesome. We got to, that's something that they are going to be, monitoring all year. But if it's acting up, that's not good. You don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that something that's been keeping him out of, 30% of the games, 25% of the games already is maybe going to keep him out of more games. That's 2 games he missed in a row. They are simply a much better team when he is in the lineup. That's an understatement. So hoping for the sake of the Twins, hoping for the sake of Byron Buxton, hoping for the sake of Twins fans that's a short-term flare-up rather than a escalation of the injury that's going to require more management as the year goes on and perhaps another stint on the injured list, whatever it's going to take. So watch for that because that could impact this division race as well. By the way, I hope you're not sick of the Twins playing Cleveland because after the Twins host 3 against the Rockies this weekend, they go to Cleveland for 5 games. 1 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. No off days in there, by the way. No off days actually between now and July 6th, including a doubleheader in there. So they are going to be busy. They're going to need longer starts from their starting pitchers, and that's tough to come by because it's Dylan Bundy tonight, Chris Archer on Saturday. Archer typically does not pitch more than 4 or 5 maximum. Bundy has had some short starts lately, been ineffective, although he was better his last time out. So we will see how that all plays out. But that's one to watch as you think about how this Cleveland series, this next Cleveland series, might end up playing out. So hope you're not tired of that because it's going to be a lot of Cleveland, a lot of Chicago going forward. Let's switch gears, talk about the Lynx for a little while. Starting to play a little bit better lately. Get a nice win, second straight good win for them over Phoenix. And Phoenix not a great team, but you know what? You can only control what you can control. You can only play who is on your schedule. And the best news out of this game, aside from scoring 100 points and winning 100-88, is Sylvia Fowles returning to the court. That's the biggest news for them because they were, she's in her farewell tour, but has been playing so well for them before she got injured. Cheryl Reeves seems like she's happier right now, saying the chemistry is as good as it's been all season. And that could be a big deal to them, too. Fowles, 14 points, 10 rebounds in 22 minutes in her return to the court. That's a pretty big deal for them as well. So, if you look now at how they've been kind of playing lately, it's getting a lot better. It's getting better from where it was at the beginning of the year. They're no longer the worst team in the league. That's not really the type of optimism we're used to seeing from this team. But if you look at this league, it's pretty top heavy. You've got a bunch of teams, 12-5, 12-6, 13-3, and it's kind of bottom heavy. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the Lynx at 5-13 could still jump into the top 8 in this league. They're really only 2.5 games out of a playoff spot right now, and some teams at the bottom that they could certainly think about passing. Now, they're only 5-13 right now after those 2 straight wins, but opportunities now ahead for them to get a little bit better. And so we will see if they can do that. They've got tough games coming up. They got 2 against Las Vegas next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next weekend. And so some harder games on the schedule. But if they're playing better, that could mean better times ahead for them. Couldn't be much worse than that 3-13 start, but things do seem like they are improving to a certain degree. Minnesota United announced a 2-year contract extension with Adrian Heath that keeps him here through the 2024 season. Loons fans did not take the news well. A lot of Heath out crowd on social media in particular, just bludgeoning whoever runs the social media for United. Just got their mentions were just in shambles. I mean, it's just the team account, but Hop Clouds replying, "We're really sorry, social media handler of MNUFC. You have to work today. We have a beer for you if you want one. We know it's not your fault that the ownership group has no ambition. I guess it's just another Minnesota men's team." Wow. Kelly saying the beatings will continue until morale improves. It's just some others that are a little bit more maybe not family friendly. It's Matt saying, "Let's rehash the Terry Ryan Twins, but with our primary MLS club. Poor choice." Hey, the Terry Ryan Twins won like a bunch of divisions in a row. I don't know if that's the worst thing you can, worst compliment or worst put down you can give someone, but fans not happy. The bottom line is Heath has gotten this club to the playoffs the last 3 years. They're still in, contention this year, although I think everyone would agree that this year has not gone how they wanted it to exactly. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how that impacts their support as time goes on. But that extension, official, and now we will see how it all plays out. Let's finish with the cooler. Didn't mention this at the beginning of the show because I wanted to focus on draft stuff, but let's bring it full circle with the Timberwolves. And looking ahead now, the league year starts in a couple of weeks. They can start negotiating. Trades can happen, things like that. Our own Chris Hine, like we heard from earlier in the show, asked Tim Connelly about the D'Angelo Russell trade speculation and if he's had enough time to evaluate Russell's long-term fit with the team. Here is Connelly on D'Lo. He said, "D'Lo was huge to the success of this team last year. I think he's an elite passer, elite shot maker. He loves basketball. The most exciting thing about this job is getting to know guys I've been fans of from afar. You don't want to force it. You don't want to come off as insincere or not be organic. I'm excited to get to know him. I know how important he was to the success of this team. He's a guy that is supremely talented, and it's hard to believe how young he is. He's seen everything this league could possibly throw at you, so I can't wait." Kind of a nothing burger of an answer, if you ask me. No knock on Tim Connelly, but not really showing any of his cards there. Certainly not saying in unequivocal terms we will not trade D'Angelo Russell. Basically saying D'Angelo Russell is a good player. I look forward to getting to know him better. End of story, full stop. So that story now will pick up as we think about the Wolves offseason, as we think about what is left to do and whether or not D'Angelo Russell is part of that long-term future or whether he is packaged as part of a reshaping of this roster. That will do it for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said at the jump, like I've said a couple times, no shows next week, no show on the 4th of July. Be back at it on July 5th. I hope you guys enjoy the week, enjoy the holiday, and we'll be back at you in a little over a week.